If I was in charge for just a day, the world would be a much different place. Actually, probably best not. You can't play at politics, as President Trump demonstrated so well. What a barking few years it's been, though, since 2016. But through the madness, there seems to have been a change in the world order. We're certainly thinking much more about the planet. I'm not so sure we're thinking too much more about each other, judging from the divisions. My guests may have thoughts on that. A whole load of Greens has certainly upset the red apple cart at City Hall in Bristol, and in the mayoral race, a newcomer to frontline politics ran the incumbent Marvin Rees blimmin' close. So what does all this mean for the future of the city, and indeed my special guest? Welcome, Sandy Hore-Ruthven. Hello, Sandy.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. I mean, just now that the whole dust has settled, you've had a week or so to reflect on everything, you came so close. And you know, it was unexpected that it was going to be as close as that. How do you reflect on that whole campaign, Sandy? How do you look back on it?
Well, we're actually really pleased. Believe it or not, we did have a plan to achieve something close to what we achieved. We knew that there were plenty of communities out there that felt that they weren't being listened to by the Labour Party. We knew people were much more concerned about green issues. And so we actually thought we could do almost as well as we did. We exceeded our expectations, but we did know that the potential was out there. So we're really pleased with how we've done. It's been great fun too. We've met so many wonderful people. We've got Greens now in new communities across the city, and I think it's good for the city. I think it's good for politics in the city too.
I mean, you've been around the party and everything, but, as I mentioned, frontline politics, going for such a high-profile job in that sort of way. What were you thinking when you were watching your odds? I think they were, 50 to 1 at one stage, and then suddenly slashed and you're down to 5 to 1. Was the adrenaline rushing? What was going through your mind at that time?
Yeah, well, obviously we knew that the momentum was behind us. We could feel it on the doorstep. You could see it on social media. People were looking for that alternative. So you start to get hopeful about things. You start to hear people who you wouldn't normally think would support the Green Party starting to say, gosh, we think Greens are a real alternative. And actually, funny enough, it was the odds were as the odds started to swing, that got us the message that we needed, which was that it's really between Greens and Labour. So often people are worried about, if you're left wing, you're worried about keeping the Conservatives out, so you just vote Labour. But I think people got the very clear message that really the Conservatives couldn't win or weren't likely to win in Bristol, and therefore you could take your pick of the more left-wing parties, and actually suddenly lots of people go Green.
Yeah, I mean, and what was it you were saying that they were saying to you on the doorstep? I understand you get protest votes and all of that, and tactical voting in politics and so on and so forth. But you've almost become the alternative Lib Dems now, haven't you? Who, when I arrived in this city 10 odd years ago, were in the supremacy. But have you sort of taken over the mantle? And what is there between you? What's the difference? What is it on the doorstep that we're saying, yeah, I like what the Greens stand for?
Certainly, it seems that nationally we are becoming the third, and certainly in Bristol, I'd say we're the second party. I mean, I think there's a number of things. When you ask what the difference is, I mean, clearly we have the environment and climate change and, looking after our planet at the heart of what we do. And I think people, as you said in your introduction, are much more concerned about those issues and want to see real action rather than just the talk that we're seeing from politicians. But also, in local politics, people want to know that they have contact with you, with your local councillor, that they can raise an issue, whether that's, fly tip or traffic on a street or air pollution or the buses that run down their road. They want to know that your local councillor or your mayor really cares about you. And I think that's what we spent a lot of time doing. This was very much our plan. We wanted to get out and listen to people and talk with them, find out what their issues were, and then create a manifesto built around that. And I think I'm afraid to say the Labour Party have not been doing that. And lo and behold, people have said, right, we want local politicians to listen to us and the issues that we're concerned about, and they voted Green.
Yeah, I mean, we'll come on to what happened in the council in a second, to that green surge, and boy, was that close. You know, if you enjoy your politics as I do, you know, when something is neck and neck like that, it's incredibly exciting. But the mayoral side of things, and maybe this hasn't been reflected in the national politics as well so much, has it done well at council level, and somehow that doesn't quite transpose to the national picture. But a mayor is also a personality, Sandy. You know, it's also, they're buying into you, the person. As much maybe as the politics. Yeah. Were you aware of that? Did you in any way even play on that? Did you have advisors? Because it's a whole new game to you, taking on somebody of the, I suppose, the magnitude of Marvin Rees, you know, going into a second term, and the whole Labour machinery behind him. You must have had a plan to execute that.
Yeah, well, so we were very clear. So you are absolutely right. And I think that is probably something I have learned more during the campaign, is how much people care about you as a person as well as your policies. But I think my history in the city is very much that I've been passionate about young people. I'm the chief executive of a now what is a large charity, and I think that really cuts. You know, in the past, Green politicians have often been well-meaning and haven't necessarily come with that sort of depth of experience in really getting things done and having a bit of a profile in the city. And I think that's something I brought, and you're right, my team around me kept saying, you must push yourself forward, you must point out to people what you've achieved, because, you know, people worry about the Greens not caring so much about, say, social equality, or, you know, young people, or, you know, our black and minority ethnic communities and that kind of thing. But it is something that I've worked with, people I've worked with all of my life. And I think therefore we were able to challenge Marvin very much. I was able to challenge Marvin very much on some of those social issues in a way many other Green candidates couldn't. And, you know, I was very clear that I was going to plant my flag very much on what was traditional Labour territory. People know we care as the Greens about the environment and climate change, but they don't necessarily know that we care about social justice and about people. So that was very much where I wanted to plant my flag. And, you know, lo and behold, it worked. And, you know, who knows what will happen next time.
What did you learn from politics through this whole thing? Because, you know, as you say, you Creative Youth Network, and you've made a fantastic success of that, and you've been protesting, you've led things in Africa and all sorts of things. You're a man who wants to get things done. But that's the good and a great side of making things happen, Sandy. But politics can be a very dirty business, and as you mentioned, as the personality steps above the parapet, you know, did you get trolled? Did you get a lot of stuff on social media that you weren't expecting? You know, were you prepared for the dirty side of what politics can bring?
Yeah, I did get trolled a little bit, and you get all sorts of people telling you should just go home and carry on hugging the trees, and, you know, and you know, just. There's sort of that kind of lack of respect and lack of engagement, really. I think what I really discovered, though, I think is the expectations that people have of you as a politician. You know, I was sort of asked whether I would personally resolve climate change at one end of the scale, and at the other end of the scale, whether I would, you know, my bin wasn't collected on Thursday night, what are you going to come and do about it? And I had to, you know, and literally everything in between. And I'm sure Marvin and other politicians get the same sort of thing. And you have to find in yourself what you feel is real, actually, and really where you genuinely think. You know, there was a point at which I was up on a green space down in South Bristol, meeting with local campaigners there who wanted to save it. But your job as a politician is to balance, you know, the need to protect our green spaces, and of course that's key. But also we have to balance that with you know, issues of homelessness and the housing crisis that we have in Bristol. So I had to find in myself that kind of, I've got to be real here. I can't just promise everybody what they want. And, you know, leading an organisation, you have to do that. Sometimes you have to make those difficult decisions that are often a compromise or a balance. So I didn't make there wasn't a sort of clear answer, because I didn't have all the the facts in front of me. But I had to say to that campaign group, look, I can't promise you that I would protect every single bit of that green space. And, you know, that made for an interesting conversation initially. And they were like, oh, you're the Green Party. You can't do, you know, you must protect absolutely everything. But by the end of the conversation, and that was quite sort of a challenge for me, but by the end of the conversation, we built a really good relationship. And I think they understood a bit more some of the housing issues that we faced. I understood better how much that green space meant to them. And I think that's where you can make really good decisions, is when you start to have that deep understanding of what local people feel, what the real issues are. So that was the real challenge for me, is to sort of to not promise the earth, literally, and, you know, be able to kind of find that right way through. But the right way through is so often to listen to people. And I have to say, I'm afraid this is where I think the Labour Party and Marvin haven't done that on things like Western Harbour, you know, the issues of the underground and all those sorts of things. He hasn't listened to people, and that's the frustration that I think people have with him. However, clearly more people voted for him than me, so he must be doing something right.
Well, we could come on to issues like the Western Harbour and views being blocked, or you know, things being changed that people don't want to have changed. Let me just ask before we do that, though. You mentioned, you know, people seeing you at the door say, well, you just go back home, you tree hugger and so on. And I suppose people do have you know, the perception, or have had the perception, a bit with the Lib Dems as well in the early days, you know, you're sandal wearing beards and, you know, and hugging trees and looking after the environment. And it's almost like a one issue party. Is the next step for you to say, yeah, do you know what? We have got policies which involve industry and aerospace and all the pushing forward and actually getting this region. I mean, yeah, there's a Metro Mayor and a Mayor. Confused, you will be. But, you know, we have to take on the powerhouses of the North, don't we? And the Midlands and those great areas which get all the publicity all the time. Nobody mentions the West when it comes to the national picture. Is the Green Party, are you geared for that? Are you geared for the big industrial decisions as well as looking after the environment and young people and so on, and housing?
Yes, absolutely. I think we are. And I think this is the irony. For a long time, the Green Party has had a range of policies on all sorts of issues, from industry, creating jobs, business. You know, I'm for business. Business is a good thing. You know, we create services and products that make our lives better. We just have to sort of manage them in a slightly different way. And so, but I think people are beginning to wake up, and maybe this is what we've seen, certainly in Bristol, but maybe across the rest of the country too, is that actually the Green Party does have a whole suite of policies, but people are just waking up to that. And that, for me, you know, we have to challenge the media sometimes and say, look, you know, don't just talk to us about climate change or air pollution. Come and talk to us about housing. Come and talk to us about business. You know, the heart of my campaign was our economic recovery from the pandemic. You know, we have a huge hospitality industry and creative industries which have been really hit by the pandemic. And, you know, I have a plan to bring those companies and organisations back into full employment, back into sort of full business that would, of course, benefit our city but create jobs as well. So I think that the Green Party does have those sweet policies, but I think it's taking us a little bit too long to get that out there and help people realise that we are ready to govern and lead, actually. But it's just taking time to get that message out there.
Yeah, still just one MP, of course. What about you know, going to be a mayor? You've described where you felt that Labour were letting the city down in some ways, but now we've got a mayor of Bristol, a Labour mayor of Bristol, and a Metro Mayor or a Weka Mayor, whatever we want to call it. Both, again, Labour. I'm very interested to see how they work together, or are they of a completely same mind, or is there going to be stalemate? Or what is, in a way, the point of this two-mayor system, and why don't we just have one greater Bristol area that's got a mayor that's going to represent the region at Westminster and across the rest of the country?
Because Bristol is one of the country's major cities, and it needs that leadership. And the thing, I think this whole election campaign has proved why we need a mayor. I know I've been involved in politics, not as a politician, but I've been.
Sorry, Sandy. No, sorry. I know why we need. I know why. Sorry to cut in. I know why we need a mayor, and I understand that leadership thing. I don't know why we need two mayors. I mean, Manchester, the Greater Manchester area, and then the Midlands. They have a mayor, don't they? They don't have two mayors. So why on earth do we need two who are probably going to, in some ways down the line, butt horns at each other and end up with stalemate?
Well, I'll continue what I was saying, because I do think the city of Bristol needs leadership. It is one of the great cities. And yes, there may be a clash, but isn't it better that we have two people banging the drum for our region and for our city? And I think it's important that Bristol gets its voice heard, even within the west of England. We're still stuck on a like sustainable transport. That despite the Labour mayor's views on an underground, nothing has really moved forward. So you have to have somebody to really push forward Bristol's agenda within the region. We are the hub of that region. We are the main economic driver, job creator. We also have the biggest impact on our environment, and it's also the place where there's most inequality and those sorts of things. So I think we do have to have somebody to lead the city alongside the mayor for the region. And I think the two, if we get it right, the two can work very well together and actually amplify each other's messages. And that's what I'm hoping. One of the advantages of having two Labour mayors is that should be the case. We'll have to wait and see if Dan Norris and Marvin Rees get on. Clearly, they've already clashed a little bit over the underground. I'm not sure if Dan Norris is as convinced as Marvin is about that, but certainly we need a regional transport system, and we need to get cracking on it, because Bristol is so far behind every other big city in that matter.
Will you have any part to play, do you think? I know it's the politics, of course, come into play here with party politics and so on. But for somebody who got, 44% of the vote for mayor, have you had a call from Marvin? Yeah. We hear a lot about, cabinets of the talents and rainbow cabinets and all of that. They don't seem to have been working terribly well as far as that sort of thing is concerned over the past administration, as far as the rainbow cabinet is concerned. But surely, for somebody who's got the popularity vote that you got, you would have an awful lot to contribute. Will that happen in any form, do you think?
I don't know. That's obviously up to Marvin as to whether he wants to give me a call. I'm passionate about Bristol and would love to help best I can in any way. We have called for a rainbow cabinet with the councillors, and now with the two parties, the Greens and Labour, an equal number of councillors, I think there should be a rainbow cabinet to properly represent the city. I have to challenge Marvin a little bit on this. He talks about collaboration, he talks about conversation and working together, but I've seen no proof of that within the political sphere. And I think this is his opportunity to prove that he does want to work with others in the city, including the Greens. And I know that our councillors are interested in doing that and want to do the best for Bristol.
What do you think, your councillors, what effect will this have now that you've got 24 each? I mean, I suppose that the mayor will not be able to push through agenda just quite as easily as he would have been able to do before. But and very often there's been accusations that the council has been slightly sidelined in this mayoral system anyway. But what effect, what difference do you think we're going to see with that makeup of the council now that the Greens have got such a prominent part to play?
I think it's a question, and I think the mayoral model, it will depend partly on how Marvin plays his hand. He can continue potentially to sideline the council, but I think that would be a mistake. Certainly, the Green Party will be able to raise more issues in council, and the key thing is going to be the budget budget, where actually the mayor won't be able to get his budget through without full council approval and a majority. And I think that's where we're going to see some of the, clear green agendas, and from other parties too, that will mean that we'll see a greening of the budget, and therefore maybe more money for green issues, for actually the housing proposals that we put forward. Our housing proposals were more progressive, I think, were more supportive of those who are the most vulnerable in our city, and we'd like to get those sorts of things back on the agenda, despite being rejected by Marvin in the budget in the spring of this year. So I think we'll have to wait and see. Again, Marvin is the leader of the city, and we're going to have to see how he plays it. But I think, the people of Bristol have sent a really clear message that they want green policies and approaches, and they want to be listened to. And I think the mayor would do well to do that, both in the council chamber and ideally by having a rainbow cabinet too.
And just a final question to you, Sandy. What's next for Sandy Hore-Ruthven? Have you got a taste for this full-time politics thing? MP? What's next? I mean, I know you've got obviously a creative youth network that you're fully involved with, but what's next for you? What do you want to do?
Oh, that's a good question. We're only a few days after the event now, so I sort of promised myself I wasn't going to make any big decisions, and I'm going to sit with Zoe, my partner, and work it out over the next few weeks. I've certainly enjoyed being in politics, sort of actually in some ways, funnily enough, more than I thought I would. The diversity of the city, the stories that told, that, I love kind of trying to work out what are quite significant challenges about the environment and housing and special educational needs, and, how we tackle our transport issues and those sorts of things. So I have really enjoyed it. I'm going to support our green councillors behind the scenes for certain, but I'm not going to make any decisions right now about what happens next. There's a little while to go, and I'm just going to take a bit of a break, get back to the day job, carry on supporting young people, and think about it more.
You can't blame me for looking for the exclusive and asking the question. Let me ask you this one seriously. Finally, back to my fantasy at the beginning. If I was in charge for a day, boy, would it be different. If you were in charge for a day, and you could change just one thing, one of those many things that you wanted to change about Bristol, you could just go for one of them, Sandy. Yeah. And I'm giving you time here to pull it to the front of your mind. What would it be?
Gosh, I think the biggest thing, I mean, look, it would take more than a day to do, but, I would love to see a proper mass transit system in our city. I think it's the biggest issue. It slows business down, it slows people down. But the fact that we all have to use our cars more often than we'd like means our air is more polluted. It's people from getting to the jobs and opportunities that are available to them. So I think it's the single thing that would have the biggest impact. And, I'm going to add one little extra as well. I think and I know we've had a pandemic and that's difficult, but I think we've lost a bit of the sense of fun. Actually, I think they used to have sort of events and festivals, and our communities are so strong, and I'd love to see more of that sense of fun coming back to the city, more art out and about as well. I think that's something that Bristolians are really proud of and love, part of why people love living here. So I'd like to see a bit more of that coming back too.
Yeah, I'm right for you there. I'm also right for you with the transit. I'm a big tram man myself. I'll fly the flag for that. Sandy, I really appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us on Tobacco Factory Television. It's been fascinating hearing your thoughts extended a little bit. So thank you very much indeed. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Nice to see you.